Hello, everyone, and welcome to our live panel discussion of Screenagers and Screenagers: The Next Chapter, presented by the Miles Jeffrey Roberts Foundation. Now more than ever, we need to facilitate dialogue about the mental health challenges facing teens today and how we can enhance the well-being of all teens. We'll have 60 minutes for this panel discussion. We at MJRF hope it will be part of an ongoing conversation about how our community can support all of our students to thrive and grow now and into the future. It will be part of an ongoing conversation about how our community. My name is Andy Eisman, and I'm delighted to be the moderator for this event. I currently serve on the Miles Jeffrey Roberts Foundation board. Professionally, I'm an assistant professor in community health in the Division of Kinesiology, Health, and Sports Studies at the Wayne State College of Education. My research focuses on strategies to improve the implementation and public health impact of evidence-based drug use prevention and social emotional learning programs in schools. This foundation and its mission are very close to my heart, both personally and professionally. Mental health issues have touched my life, as I'm sure it's touched many of yours in many ways, and I'm honored to be a part of efforts to support mental well-being, such as with MJRF. I'd like to acknowledge our amazing team, my fellow board members, because it really is a team effort. Andy Wright, Liz Merrick, Rich Depp, Tracy Loveland, and of course the founders, Kristen and Jeff Roberts. I'd also like to acknowledge Rob Hawley for his help with this event. I'd like to turn it over now to Jeff Roberts for an overview of the foundation and this event.
Thank you, Andy. Let me first begin by thanking everybody who's participating in today's event, who took the time to watch the Screenager movies. We believe this discussion will be beneficial as we move forward. I also want to thank our partners, the Washtenaw County Community Mental Health and Washtenaw Intermediate School District, for making this event possible, and our Republic Schools for helping promote the event. And again, as Andy indicated, this event would not be possible without the Miles Jeffrey Roberts Foundation Board and our technical support, especially Andy Eisman, Tracy Loveland, Rich Dopp, Kristen Roberts, and Rob Hawley. And finally, a special thanks to the panelists that you'll hear from shortly, who care deeply about youth mental health and are bringing their individual expertise and experience to today's discussion. The Miles Jeffrey Roberts Foundation was established in honor of Miles Roberts, who at 15 years old died by suicide. Miles was a loving son, brother, teammate, classmate, and friend who was committed to helping others. He had a beautiful smile, a warm demeanor, a strong hug, and you always knew you could count on him. His passing sent shockwaves through our family and the community. The mission of the Miles Jeffrey Roberts Foundation is to promote youth mental health and suicide prevention through effective programs, education, and advocacy. We believe this event supports that. Today's youth are bombarded with interactions that include instantaneous feedback, sterile communications, a lack of interpersonal, social, emotional skill development, and there is a clear role with technology and the effect on the brain. We believe fostering difficult discussions around the challenges facing youth mental health and well-being will identify programs that can help make a difference. Thank you again, everyone who's participating in today's event. Andy, back to you.
Before we get started with the discussion, I'd like to go over a few logistics. The first is, please submit any questions for the panelists via Facebook Live in the comments. If your question or comment is for a specific person, it would be helpful if you include the name at the beginning of the question. Our focus is on creating a constructive dialogue around youth mental health issues versus debating. Any remaining questions not answered during this session will be answered on the Miles Jeffrey Roberts Foundation website, and the website address is here. We'll also be sharing resources throughout this presentation, including local, state, and national resources. And the resources discussed here today will also be posted on the MJRF website. This is but one step in an ongoing conversation about how we can make a positive impact on youth mental health. Undoubtedly, difficult problems require collaboration, cooperation, and creativity. And this panel, which I'm very excited to share with you, brings together people from different backgrounds for exactly that reason, sharing unique perspectives, strengths, and ideas. And we look forward to hearing yours, because our objective is to share ideas and resources to improve the mental well-being of youth, using this film as a starting point for our discussion. So we will spend some time talking about factors that influence youth mental health, but then we also want to be sure that we spend time talking about current thinking around potential strategies and solutions. So we look forward to hearing your thoughts and questions throughout this discussion. Without further ado, I'm delighted to introduce our panelists and allow each of them an opportunity to share a little bit about themselves. And we'll start with Felicia Brabeck.
Thank you, Andy. I really appreciate it. I want to say thank you to Kristen and Jeff for bringing us all together, and the board members at MJRF. And thanks to all the parents and students who are here with us tonight, and my fellow panelists. My name is Felicia Brabeck. I am a psychologist. I also have a background in social work and have been practicing for 25 years. And I work with adolescents and adults, and I love that work. I also am a new state rep, and one of my primary objectives in Lansing is to work on mental health care and access to that. And 3 of my first 10 bills are all around mental health care. And so things that are really important to all of us on this panel. And I'm also a mom of 2 teenagers, 13 and 11. So excited to be here and to learn from my fellow panelists.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Trish Cortez. I am the Executive Director of Washington County Community Mental Health. Washington County Mental Health historically has always been a safety net mental health provider for mostly individuals who have Medicaid as a form of insurance. I'm really excited to be here tonight because, as some of you may know, Washington County passed a mental health millage in 2017. And starting 2019, we've been able to expand the scope of who we serve at mental health, which means anyone who's a Washington County resident. It has been a fabulous endeavor where we can actually reach more people. And so I'm really excited to be on the panel here tonight to let you all know more about those resources that are available. I also want to thank Kristen and Jeff and the board members for having us here tonight. This is a really important conversation, obviously one that's very dear and near to my heart, as I've been part of the mental health system for 20 years. I also am the mother of twin boys who are 13 years old, and certainly also, all living together through this pandemic. So I'm really excited to also talk about not just mental health issues, but things that we need to be looking for now and into the future with our youths in terms of kind of making it through this pandemic. So thank you again for having me here tonight.
Good evening. My name is Rich Dopp, and also honored to be a part of this group. I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist in the Department of Psychiatry at Michigan Medicine, and also serve as the medical director at the University Psychological Clinic and University Center for the Child and Family. I'm also a parent of a 16-year-old and 18-year-old, and I'm fond of saying that despite my education and training and the fact that I am a supposed expert at times, I could also use a coach at home, and look forward to sharing, but also learning from this group as well.
Good evening.
Hi. Sorry, Judy, go ahead.
Yeah, it's great. Good evening. My name is Judy Gardner, and I am the National Alliance on Mental Illness here in Washtenaw County's Executive Director. We are a national organization that provides services to those families and individuals families who live in support of someone with a mental health condition or individuals who live with a mental health condition. And I look at NAMI as an organization that is truly a circle around those families and individuals in helping them cope with such difficult illnesses. Also, I'm very grateful to be on this panel. My life was changed about 12 years ago when I found NAMI. I had a loved one who had a serious mental health condition at the time. They were pretty sick and I didn't understand what was really going on. And this organization really helped myself and my family navigate through sometimes very broken systems and also understand how to best support someone who lives with a mental health condition. So I want to thank you, Kristen and Jeff, for inviting me to be on this panel. I'm privileged to be here, and I hope we get some questions from the viewers tonight. Thank you.
Okay, now it's my turn. I was really anxious. My name is Holly Hevlin. I work for Washtenaw Intermediate School District. I am also humbled to be a part of this dialogue tonight. I've worked as a school psychologist in Ohio, Tennessee, and Michigan. Currently work as the Executive Director of Community and School Partnerships for Washtenaw ISD, which is really a unique role in working with many of the panelists to help support educators, support youth and family in a variety of ways. I am also a parent of 3 teens myself, 3 boys. I'm a 3-boy mom. And I have used almost every tool that I have learned during COVID in supporting myself, my husband, as well as my family. So I think this is a really timely conversation. I'm very passionate about helping people connect with resources that they need to support themselves, particularly during this pandemic time.
Hello, my name is Jay Holden. I'm a social worker with Regional Alliance for Healthy Schools at Michigan Medicine. Thanks so much to MJRF for having me. I look forward to being part of the discussion. Regional Alliance for Healthy Schools, or RAS, as most people know it as, is a school-based health centers. And so we're located in Washtenaw and Genesee counties. And recently we've had some additions of mental health only hubs to the public school sectors. What we do in the mental health only hubs is individual therapy and group therapy. That's the social worker's role. We also have medical and mental health hubs that focus on comprehensive care. So we have nurse practitioners, dietitians, social workers, and medical assistants. We have physicians that rotate through. We have physicians that can prescribe psychotropic medications for mental health needs. So we try to meet a lot of different needs in the community, and our goal is accessibility. So that's why we're in the schools specifically in the health center, and we don't have any copays associated with our services. If students don't have insurance, they can be connected with insurance through our team. It's really meant to meet students where they're at and provide quality care in a non-judgmental way. One thing that I'm really excited to be associated with through that role there, I'm at Lincoln Middle School, and we have a peer-to-peer depression awareness campaign going on, as many schools do in the Washtenaw area. The peer-to-peer depression awareness campaign is through the Depression Center, and it's something that has been around for almost a dozen years now. They've been doing great work on community education and awareness of depression and decrease of stigma, and then great referrals to treatment. So helping students learn about what is depression. They go to a great training on that experience, and then they help their peers at their school get connected with care if the peers need that. They even do, asking about suicide, which is scary for a lot of students to even think about, but the comprehensive training that they get really gives them a nice foundation to be a great boots on the ground support to their peers. I'd love to personally meet the demand of mental health needs at Lincoln, and I know that's not possible. And so it's great to be connected with programs like that, that even Screenagers references in the second film, the next chapter. We're talking about how to help connect students with care and how to have great communication education about using I statements and active listening to promote mental health across a wider area than just the scope of service that I can deliver. So it's a privilege doing the work that I do. I really enjoy it, and I'm really excited to be part of the panel. Thanks so much.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mimi Maxner. I'm a current sophomore at the University of Michigan, and I am on the Depression Center Student Advisory Board. And in high school, I went to Pioneer High School in Ann Arbor, and I was in peer-to-peer for 3 years there. And I really had an excellent experience there. I learned how to identify classmates and peers and what their signs and symptoms of depression are. And we were able to connect a lot of people to resources, which was a really positive experience. And yeah, I'm happy to be here today. Thanks.
Great, thank you all for that. All right, so now we're going to move on to the discussion part of our program. And I'd really like to start by asking Dr. Rich Dopp to give us just a brief overview about youth mental health issues and key factors that influence it.
Yeah, and just to kind of set some of the tone, I guess we're hoping to let parents know tonight that they aren't alone. That even, us, folks with some training in this area are always looking for help and still struggling, as many families are at this time. I guess I tend to think that it's harder to be a teen now than when I was a teen, with more pressures and more demands. I think it's also worth acknowledging that it's probably harder to be a parent now than when my parents were parenting in some ways. And again, just trying to foster communication here that may serve as a springboard to communication in the household between parents and their children on healthy use of technology. Child and adolescent depression has been an issue for many years. There was a period of time when it was under-recognized, but I think certainly for some time it's been acknowledged that children as well as teens certainly can experience depression. Those teen years are critical for so many things. It's a time of development that includes individuation and moving away from one's parents, relying more on their peers. And certainly technology is creating platforms for that, both for positive and at times negative. We have seen that the prevalence of depression in children has been on the rise. In oftentimes adolescents and young adults seem to be those two groups that maybe are increasing in their prevalence more so than other age groups at this time. And there's a concern that technology is a piece of that. For years, even before the emphasis on technology, I've been interested in the role of sleep and exercise and other activities as it relates to adolescent depression. But certainly sleep is one that certainly we can talk about it, where technology, I think, certainly is having an impact. Kind of similar to, I just want to make sure I get the name right, Dr. Rustin, who was our lead and director through the movies. I recall the TV going to fuzz at 1 o'clock. It was not a credible distraction to me as a kid. And in some ways, I feel fortunate to have not had so many distractions in my pocket at times. So really just am open to having a discussion. We can talk about elements of, adolescent brain development and other things that may be at play. But really, I do think that the practical discussion of this WISE group around ways to set up conversations that are more collaborative, hopefully with our children, that also will lead to some real practical suggestions and ideas that parents can take away.
Thank you, Rich. I'd like to ask all the panel members,
what their reactions were to the frequency of anxiety and depression among teens discussed in the film. And, if you're so inclined, potentially the role of screen time. And I wondered maybe we could start with Jay.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Sadly, I don't think it's a surprise to a lot of clinicians. As a panelist here, and just the work that I do, the frequency of mental health impairment is common. As Dr. Dopp was mentioning, the increased demand for care is real. I think the students struggling with depression and anxiety, it's really important to know that they're not alone and that there is help. So while some of the symptoms are getting in the way of their functioning, maybe it's the worries about what other people are thinking, or maybe it's mood challenges like the loss of interest in things that they used to enjoy, there is help available. And so it's not that you're bad or you're broken. It's not that you're doing anything wrong even. There's care available for you, and there's resources that are there for you. And that's part of what this panel is about, is presenting some of those. So when we look at the role of screens in that, I think initially some of that role is I want to be more connected. I want to be part of something. I want to connect with my friends more often than I could, maybe just at school. And so I think there's a natural drive to want to be on things like social media that engage me, whether it's with my friends at school or online friends. Either way, I think it's great that students want to be connected, and that feeling of isolation, especially now in the pandemic, is really powerful, and it's strong. And also trying to navigate how that can help you by connecting. So it's not that social media is bad. I think that I had some worry about, okay, are we getting into this framework of now we can't do any social media, we can't do any online gaming? And I don't think that's what we're talking about. I think we're trying to achieve balance in life and trying to connect with people in a way that we genuinely can enjoy the relationship with them. Because really the social media platform evolution is about relational engagement. And so when we try to reach out to people, if we're getting that reciprocity, that back and forth, that's a good sign that we're taking care of us. And sometimes that means that can be on the computer and that can be on the phone. And sometimes that needs to be in person too. Thanks.
Felicia, I wondered if you would speak to that as well.
Sure, thanks, Andy. And I completely agree with what Jay just said. As a clinician, and maybe it's occupational hazard, but it's not something that is surprising that we're seeing it on the rise. The other thing I'm really appreciative in our community here, and Trish mentioned this earlier, is the intentional work that's being done and has been done before, but is being done again in a really intentional way around stigma and stigma reduction. And folks then, getting the message that it's okay to go get help. And I feel like one of the things that I have seen over my time and being able to work with adolescents is that I have seen more kids advocating for themselves to go get help rather than their parents. It's the kids who are going to their parents and saying, I really want to go talk to someone. And so that work that we're doing around stigma reduction is really working. And it's so important that we continue to do that. So I'm really grateful as a clinician for that. But one of the things that I worry about with the increase in terms of screens is, developmentally, where adolescents are, there's that desire and drive to be with their friend group, right? Like that move away from parents, that family unit, to the friend group. And one of the things that I worry about, though, is when that friend group gets together, what I see often, even with our kids, is that they're together, but on their screen. So there's, they may be together, but there's this paucity in terms of quality of interaction and all of the lessons that that often get learned in face-to-face interactions. It's one of the things that they talked about and touched on in the movie is, when you're face-to-face talking with someone and something that happens that piques our anxiety, and then working through that, and how we get to do that and that practice that we get to have. And there aren't as many opportunities when students are side by side looking at their screens and just sharing something that's on a screen. So that practice that used to happen isn't happening as much. And then those skills aren't as sharp. And we all know that the way that we improve things in our lives is by practicing. And so, being able to practically help, I've known this even with our kiddos, like helping them practically with skills becomes really important, and you have to be really intentional when there's such a big distraction that's calling them. And so those are the main things that really resonated with me, both as a clinician and a mom.
Judy, I wondered if you would speak to that too, what your reactions are to the anxiety and depression among teens that was discussed in the film.
I would have to agree with both the folks that spoke earlier. But what I did notice, what really resonated with me as a non-clinician, is the importance of the woman in the film talking with her children and listening to her children and believing what they were saying. And I think the young lady in the first film, they had given her, I believe the parents had given her some kind of a contract, and were allowing her to have some input in that. And that really stood out for me, because I'm finding as a parent, living in support of a son who had serious depression, I'm glad that I listened to him. Sometimes as parents, we don't really understand what's going on, and it's okay. We just don't. We don't, all of us. I think someone spoke earlier when they were introducing themselves, and I could so appreciate it. It might be Dr. Dopp, where you just said, all of us don't know everything. Even if we're clinicians, we don't have all the answers. And that stood out more for me than really focusing on what was causing, or with, using if by being on their screens was going to have a cause and effect. I really looked at the point of importance for parents to hear and listen to their children and engage their children.
Thank you
So
for
I'd like
that,
to offer
Judy.
that. Sure.
Mimi, I'd love to hear your perspective. I think what you are hearing from teens, what you're seeing from, teens and emerging adults, around some of the messages that were conveyed in the film.
Yeah, I was gonna say that if I look at like the friends I've had through high school and even into college, it's not surprising that a lot of kids have like problems with, they have a lot of depression, anxiety, and no one's really unaffected by it. If it's not you that has it and a friend has it and you need it to help support them. What I was gonna say about that is it's frustrating, especially being online, if you can't access like your normal support system. So you kind of have to find different routes to do that. And in some ways it's a lot harder because you have to schedule, like have nothing to look forward to. And so because of that, maybe my mood is really down. So I have to actively, and my friends and I have to say, hey, I need to make a schedule for myself to get out of bed in the morning every single day, especially in college right now for me, is that like we have a lot more freedom, and even online school, it's not as like scheduled. So you have to kind of be a little bit more accountable and set a schedule for yourself. And then also kind of things that I've found that helped are just kind of putting like some like goal, or like scheduling some fun event. So there's something to look forward to, because right now it doesn't seem like there's really anything motivating a lot of people, and it's just everyone's mood is kind of down. But if you can say, hey, on Friday after a long week at school, I'm going for a walk with my friend, or I'm going to, one of my friends said, hey, there's like a mindfulness something being provided by school, or I heard of this one study group that we could join together. And that way you can kind of try and branch out in different ways. That somewhat helps with that, because the more interaction I found, and a lot of my peers, the more interaction we have, the better we feel. And it's really challenging to find that. So it takes a lot more like initiative on us like students and to do that.
Well, you certainly, helped us segue into, what's on a lot of people's minds, which is how the film's messages, relate to COVID-19 and COVID-19 related considerations. And I'd love to hear a little bit from, Trish Cortez about, what you're seeing as far as resource utilization, from that perspective, especially as we have transitioned to, a largely online environment.
Well, one of the functions of community mental health, as I mentioned when I was introducing myself, our historic population that we served is the Medicaid population. And part of what we're responsible for is authorizing inpatient stays for individuals, all individuals in Washington County who are on Medicaid. So for that subset of the population, so just of all Washington County residents, for youths that are on Medicaid, what we're seeing is a substantial increase in the number of youths that we are authorizing inpatient stays for that is directly linked to COVID-19 stressors and triggers. So just in 7 months, we have seen 20 hospitalizations that are 100% being attributed to some trigger or stressor around COVID-19. So then if you look at what that would look like for all kinds of insurance, you can just have an idea of what that number might look like. So we are definitely seeing an increase in acuity related to COVID-19. It's also important to remember that one of the things that we've found, and certainly in our work that we've done with Holly and Jay and others, is that the bar for an inpatient hospitalization is set very, very high, much higher than I think what folks normally would think that it is. And so as a community mental health provider, staff really have a very good understanding of what it means to have an inpatient hospitalization. It means that you essentially need containment, which is a high threshold. So for these individuals, the acuity that we're seeing with our youths is not insignificant in the least. So I guess my message would be is that we're already seeing an increase, as many of the panels have discussed, of just overall mental health, depression, anxiety as a society, and certainly our youths. But COVID-19 certainly is pushing that and accelerating that to a much greater degree. There is a study from the early 2000s from when the SARS pandemic happened over in Asia. And what the papers that have come out of that have demonstrated that adolescents are a high risk population due to the isolation of having to survive and be safe during a pandemic. So I think a little later on tonight, I'll be talking a little bit about more resources, and what's available to all Washington County residents. But I guess I'll leave it right now with that, that the acuity is real. We are certainly seeing it in mental health. We are getting more and more calls for service, more and more crisis calls. So that's just the reality of what we're living in right now.
Thanks, Trish. Judy, I also wanted to ask what you're seeing in terms of differences for, people trying to navigate finding resources in the current environment.
Well, we're very, very fortunate to have a partnership with Community Mental Health to be able to send folks over to their CARES program. So that's one piece that's really good, because sometimes when you have callers that call our office and they don't have insurance, that has been a real relief. But I could say personally, we're seeing a lot more enrollments in a lot of our education programs. And I'm happy to see some of the additional enrollments in our peer-to-peer programs. But I'm finding a lot of parents at a loss of how to deal with their children. So there's more people calling in the parents calling, not knowing what could be a mental health condition, or if it's something that they need to call and take their child to the hospital, or what's going on. And so I find that if I were to say anything, doing more education in the community with parents and caregivers, and just everyone around mental health and the signs of mental health. So that's kind of what we're seeing. Not a lot of calls from teenagers. We serve a youth group of 18 and over. We have had some increased participation in our support groups, which is lovely. Not what I would like to see. A lot of the young folks are, just in my own experience, in my own circle of influence outside of my job, young folks they don't really know who to call or where to go. So, it's a big issue. But that's pretty much what we're saying, really just more parents reaching out saying, hey, what's going on and where can I get some help or resources?
Great, thanks, Judy. I wanted to turn to Holly to ask her, as long as we're talking about parents and, some concerns that parents have. And can you speak a little bit to some of the concerns around screen time, especially in, this time of COVID, with remote learning?
Sure. This has been a huge transition for public education and for our families, parents in particular. We have, through our own WISD programs, really personally worked with each individual parent to help personalize. We have very small programs serving mainly kids with very serious and profound abilities and disabilities. I think what we're seeing across our districts is parents really struggling with managing a remote learning platform and the social media that comes in with it. And if I put on my parent hat, I have 3 boys myself, and we have really had to have conversations around their tech usage during the day. They are all remote during the day. And then how do you balance that with after school, knowing that many of those opportunities have been taken away for our young people. And so there's been a lot of parent networking to create different spaces for kids to have that connection. I know initially my kids, a couple of them jumped into the Fortnite space because they actually, what I realized is they could have a social conversation with their friend, not staring at them like they do in class. That's very awkward and uncomfortable for our young people, but talking as if they were sitting on the couch with one another. So I think for K-12 educators, as we've kind of had to pivot so dramatically into this remote hybrid space, we have been doing a lot of training with staff around technology usage time. How do we do a variety of instructional activities to manage and try to mitigate the amount of screen time? And I know our colleagues in Ann Arbor Public Schools did very robust surveying of their parents and really came out after the winter break and shifted and decreased the amount of direct screen time. And so they're seeking that feedback from the young people as well as parents. But that's something that COVID presents. And Mimi, I think, beautifully, gave a student perspective of that. And how do you manage? We can't change some aspects of this, but can we teach kids about the importance of behavioral activation and getting up, and we can't do maybe the same rec and ed activities that we did before, but what can we do in creating space for those conversations?
Thanks for that, Holly. I just want to, as a reminder for anyone on the Facebook live stream, if you do have questions, please feel free to enter them in the chat. Rich, was there something you were going to add to this discussion?
Yeah, just thinking about the challenges related to COVID, the additional challenges. They come in many forms. Number one, we aren't getting out of the house as much as we used to. And so some of those biological rhythms that are set, in some ways by the sun hitting our eyes and traveling to our clock center in the brain, some of those triggers could be lost. The challenges for college students and high school students who are using their bedrooms for their hangout space, their classroom, and their sleeping space. And in some ways, the body loses that cue that this is where I sleep. That's what I do when I'm here. That can be a challenge. So sometimes finding another space to do that work can be helpful. Getting out of the house for daily walks can be helpful. I'm asking people, do you have boots, hats, and gloves? Can you go out anyhow? I know it's gray and it's Michigan winter. But also, I don't pretend to have had a ton of success at getting teens to say, yes, I am committed to reducing my technology use. I usually try to come around it by trying to get them engaged in other activities, which is even harder now than ever before. And so, I tend to try to pull teens in by telling them that their brains have more neural connections than any of the rest of us. Maybe you're winning the race there in terms of brain cells right now. And the ones we use, they get supported and myelinated, almost hardwired, so that transmission can move very quickly. And so the things we do during adolescence, we're going to be able to do going forward. A great time to learn an instrument and a language and to be involved in physical activity and other things that are just harder to come by right now. So Mimi, I really like the way that you talked about being planful around setting things up and creating things, and really just trying to encourage some regular rhythm to the days of our households.
If I might add, Andy, I think one of the things that we've used really successfully in K-12, and for parents who are looking for resources, Trails to Wellness is a project led by Dr. Elizabeth Koshman out of the U of M Depression Center. And she's worked with us for several years now. And during COVID, she really came out with some great resources for parents and for young adults to do exactly what Mimi talked about. So she has here's how I can make a schedule for the week. But before we even get to that conversation, why does this help my mental wellness? Right. And so it's honoring the experience that COVID has thrown so many people into. And we're certainly seeing that young people in our schools who didn't have mental health issues before are presenting with mild anxiety and depression. And so we've been able to pivot and use some of these tools, whether it's in a guidance class or an advisory class, or just sharing them and getting them in the hands of parents to have those conversations with the young people in their home to help them understand and put language to what they're going through.
We actually had a related question, Holly, and I figured you were probably the best person to answer this, and that is, are there programs specifically for parents seeking guidance in working with their own children in this environment? Because certainly this can put, stress on relationships.
Yeah, I know that our colleague and fellow board member, Tracy Loveland, has been a part of a group in Ann Arbor. Many of their mental health staff, social workers, and psychologists have done a parent support group, and this is a #1 topic that comes up for them. So if you're in Ann Arbor Public Schools, you can certainly look to that resource. I know that in Chelsea, for some of our out-county districts, they have done parent education webinars in the evenings. Judy Gardner with NAMI has been a wonderful partner. I know she's worked in both Dexter and Chelsea to facilitate parent-led conversations around this very topic. We partnered with them to host a group for parents who were parenting kids who were actively suicidal. And that was a really robust group. We were meeting in person at the Washtenaw Intermediate School District, but that's pivoted. So there are a couple different resources I would point to, NAMI being one, and then checking with your local district. Saline Area Schools, I believe their mental health committee has also provided a variety of options as well.
Great, thank you for that. I also wanted to, be sure that I wanted to ask Jay and Felicia. I'm grateful that we've moved on to discussing some resources and solutions. But one issue that certainly comes up is, when should parents be concerned? So I wondered if Jay and Felicia would be willing to speak to that.
Yeah, Felicia, if it's all right if I go, I can share a little bit about what I would recommend to parents I'm working with, which is, if you're hearing any concerns of safety, self-harm, thoughts of suicide, those are things to follow up with and take really seriously. Just like we train the peer-to-peer mentors in the schools, however people interpret those, it is really important to take those very seriously and to follow up with professional help. a great place to start is with the school counselors. They're very knowledgeable. They have had a lot of training in working with safety. And so that's a great immediate resource that you already have to connect with students that your children with if you do have safety concerns. So some other things to watch, traditional symptoms like isolation that can look a lot different in COVID right now because we're all isolated in some way. But just that general withdrawing further into oneself in the shift in attitude. Irritability is one that is important to watch a lot with adolescents and depression symptoms. So those kind of things that might pop up, I think, are really important to just be mindful of. We're all in a different stage right now, and so it's harder to assess, right? So really in mental health, we're looking for any significant change in functioning, change in some of the symptoms like sleep or appetite. Those are all a little different. Now we've been in this realm for almost a year, and so some of those things might not be so new now. So if you're seeing a lot of major changes, this is what the peer-to-peer mentors like Mimi are talking about at the student presentation, saying, look for major changes in your peers, or in this case, in your children, to be aware of, and then just be aware of some of the resources that are around. And starting at the school is a great spot. Felicia, what are you thinking?
Jay, I want to echo everything that you said. I was actually taking notes and I said, like functioning, sleeping, eating, grades, irritability, what are they, how are they talking to you? One of the things that I also get to encourage the parents of the teens that I get to work with is to not forget to check in with your kid. Like ask your kid how they're doing. And I think sometimes parents think they'll come to me. If there's really a problem, they'll come to me. But like most time, our kiddos are waiting for us to ask them and to show them that we recognize, that we care, that we want to be there. That's just a very intentional way to show them, in addition to all the other ways. And so, I think being able to just check in like that, in addition to looking for all these kind of markers that Jay was talking about, is a great way for us to kind of stay on top, especially during this time when, as Jay was saying, things look so different right now because of the prolonged isolation that we have been living through.
Mimi, I wondered, oh, sorry, go ahead, Rich.
I was just going to comment on help seeking too, and the challenges therein. It's great to identify that need. It's wonderful if our children are on board with that. That's even better. And then you start making calls and hearing about how full everybody is and the long wait lists and things like that. And not to go on and on about that, but mostly just to say, when you get confronted with what sounds like a ridiculously long wait list, please get on it. I worry that people hang up the phone without getting on it, and then 6, 8, 10 weeks later, the same difficulties are still there. And so that's just one piece of advice is to follow through, make the call, and to get on that wait list. And that actually sometimes helps with that motivational interviewing process, allows a teen to have several weeks to think about that and reflect on it and maybe be more prepared.
And Trish, I wondered if you, I'm sorry. And then Trish, I wondered if you could speak to maybe some of those resources that people don't know are necessarily available.
Sure. So before I address that, because absolutely, Rich, I agree. But one of the things that as a parent I've learned, and I've learned from some of the people on this panel in the previous events, is that don't always expect that your child wants to sit across a table from you or sit eye to eye looking at you on the couch to tell you about how they're feeling. That I can tell you in my experience during this whole pandemic, I have walked, I don't even know how many miles with my children, and all three of us are in a row and we're all looking forward. And it is the richest conversations I've ever had with my 13-year-olds. And I think a lot of it is that, we're not necessarily making eye contact. It's not this like kind of forced, let's sit down at the kitchen table and have a discussion. I think that works for some kids, but I think that, I think in a lot of our experiences, the best phone in previous to being 13, some of the greatest conversations I had with them was when they're in the back seat and I'm driving. So, I think that that's something to just realize that not every kid wants to sit across the table from you to have this conversation. The other thing that, what Rich is saying is, yes, the wait lists in the, just about anywhere in this county, whether it's for therapy, psychiatry, et cetera, are very long, months long. And so that is why I'm so grateful to how generous our community is and that they passed this mental health millage, because what that has given this community is resources to immediate access to mental health services. And so I want to talk a little bit about that because I think this is really important. It's not just for socioeconomically challenged individuals. I have friends of my own that have been unable, despite having excellent insurance, to get their child in to go see a mental health professional. So the Washington County mental health millage is truly for all residents, regardless of insurance, regardless of age. And you don't have to be in a crisis. I think that everybody thinks that they have to figure out, well, am I in a crisis? And am I sick enough? Should I be calling this line? Just call. Just call, because the whole intent of the CARES team and this millage is either hook you up with resources if we know where there's some, or at least begin treatment, do an assessment, and we will hang on to you until maybe your name does come up on a provider list for another community provider. But I really want to emphasize that the mental health millage is for all Washington County residents, regardless of insurance, regardless of age. So I know that the resource will be posted on the website for the foundation, but I'll just say it right now, 734-544-3050 is the number to call to even just ask a question, find out if there's another resource, or let alone if you are in crisis, we are a 24/7, 365-day team. We will go to where you are. We go to the schools, we go to the homes, we go to the emergency rooms, we will go anywhere in the community. So it's not a place that you need to worry about what the hours are. It doesn't matter if you want to come to us, great, we will come to you. We've got all kinds of telemedicine, inpatient appointments. Because of COVID, we are still seeing people face to face. So just know that this is a really, really, great resource that we are very fortunate to have here in Washington County. And I really encourage you all to use it. Even if you're not sure if you need it, call anyways.
If I could just add to that, as a K-12 educator, we started working when the CARES team was up, and working with kind of retraining our school staff to leverage and utilize that. And we really increased the number of referrals, which we thought was really great because we were getting more people connected to the services that they needed. Instead, our schools were wrongly referring kids and families to psychiatric hospitalization where they weren't getting what they needed, and they were frustrated and they were spending a lot of time. So my plea to parents is to use the CARES team.
Yes.
Our numbers for youth referrals are down, and we know that's because our schools are not putting eyes and ears and connecting with those kids in those hallway interactions because we're not in space with them. And so we need our parents to use this resource that's in our community, not necessarily go to the ERs unless it is a serious safety issue, and just call and ask questions. They'll talk with you, they'll consult with you, they can help put a safety plan together, and they will bridge beautifully until you are in to more permanent, longer term treatment. It really is a godsend.
Yes. I want to jump in there also. Thank you so much, Holly, and especially yes, you, Trish, for speaking about that. I want to speak to the parents that are watching this Facebook Live. Also know that listen to your young person or your child or your neighbor or whoever you see, a young person that might be struggling. Listen and believe them. I had a parent whose daughter gets straight A's and she's an athlete and all these wonderful accolades that we're all very proud of when our kids are doing, but she was also cutting. And so the parent was saying to me, well, I think it's just COVID. No, cutting is serious. So make sure that you're listening, you're being aware, you're watching, and I know you're doing, and we're all stressed out too, right, as parents. So I'm not pointing a finger at parents, but I want parents to also listen and hear and know that no question is a dumb question. And just like Trish was saying, it's a 24/7 line. Give them a call if you're concerned about any behavior, because a lot of times, I don't have the background to understand that, but I do know that I'm not a clinician, but I'm a parent of a son who had a serious depression and he had suicide ideation. And I am so grateful that I listened and took it seriously, but sometimes you don't know that. There are no signs. So please hear me, parents. You might not, sometimes there are no signs, but there were signs here. And I told this parent that I was speaking to last week, just give them a call over at CMH. And so she did. And sometimes it's scary to make that first phone call because you got the stigma, you got all those other things that go in place with it. And then you just feel like, well, maybe if they just go to sleep, they'll be okay tomorrow. So parents, it's no dumb question. It's no wrong way. Just make the phone calls or call us at NAMI and we can help you and handhold you over to CMH if you need it.
Thank you so much, Judy. Mimi, I wanted to ask you about just your thoughts in terms of what you hear from young people about what is helpful from parents. What's helpful from parents, and I guess a second part of that question is, are there options for peer-to-peer, at this point during COVID?
Oh yeah, I think that just like everyone's been saying, make sure you validate whatever your child is feeling, because it's always better to step in and try and develop some positive coping skills before whatever it is progresses too far. And then once everything kind of hits the fan, that's a lot harder to kind of stop and get in control than if you kind of have some like positive coping in place beforehand. I was going to say validate it. And also right now, like kind of understand that nobody's going to be functioning at their absolute best right now, where everyone's in a pandemic, nothing is normal. And saying, like, for me, what my parents have told me that is really, really helpful is say, hey, maybe I'm not getting as excellent grades as I was before, but I'm doing okay and I'm still trying really hard, and it's a pandemic and that's okay. And just letting them know that we recognize that you recognize your kid's still working hard, and even everything seems like 10 times harder right now because nothing is normal, and that is fine, and that's okay as long as they're trying and as long as there's not anything serious. And Jay mentioned like what you look out for. And then regarding like peer-to-peer and other things, a lot of that is still going on online and you can always access it. And I mean, I still have things like peer-to-peer and then like college support groups, and there's all these clubs and things, they're still going on. It just might be in like a Zoom fashion, and you can still talk to somebody over Zoom, and even like talking to anyone over Zoom for whatever club, anything, it always boosts my mood if you can just have a face-to-face conversation with somebody. Yeah, that's helpful.
Great, thanks for that, Mimi. We are quickly running out of time, so I guess I'd like to invite, any of our panel members, if there is, a thought or a resource that you'd like to share that we haven't yet discussed. I'd love to give you an opportunity to, we'd love to give you an opportunity to do that now.
Go ahead, Allie.
We used some grant money that came into the state amongst K-12 and partnering with community mental health. There's a national program called Youth Mental Health First Aid, and there's also Youth Mental Health First Aid for adults. And I would encourage any parent that wants to learn more to sign up for that. We have a team of school-based practitioners who are now certified as trainers. We will embed a Google link so that you can sign up for that. And it really is helping parents and anyone who works with youth to understand that the onset of some mental health issues happens in adolescence. We know that. And so this program really helps walk you through the 4 most common mental health issues that we see and talk to you about what are the resources in your community, and to really train you to be kind of a first aid responder to see something and help make a connection for youth and their family to get them the treatment so that they can start learning really positive skills to manage the anxiety, the depression, whatever the issue is that is presenting to them. And so we'll have that available on the foundation website, link where people can sign up for more.
I was just going to say, I think we really have some nice themes around stigma reduction and help seeking that have come through. Circling back to the technology question and thinking of ways to help youth enhance their mix of feelings or be more aware of their ambivalence about technology. This idea of control over our screens versus our screens controlling us. And so another platform and another movie that I found helpful was looking at The Social Dilemma, that really just looked at the development of some of these platforms and how good they are at demanding your attention. And almost hoping to, I guess I have this hope that teens will see that and kind of resist in some ways. But just wanted to throw that idea, The Social Dilemma, as another way to launch some more discussion.
I would add one thing in terms of the clinician's viewpoint. We've been talking about connecting to resources, and Rich was talking about how the wait list, and they are incredible. One of the things that I would encourage folks, and this is whether it's for your child or yourself, that when you get to meet with a therapist and it's not a fit, please try someone else. Don't just stop there. And one of the things that we know about therapy is that the greatest indicator of success in therapy is the fit between the person and the therapist, and even beyond any sort of modality that folks use. And so please don't give up if your kid says, like, I don't like the person, that was it. So that there will be someone else out there who will be a good fit for your child. So I just wanted to add that plug to not give up on that.
And possibly to front load some of that, to say, hey, yes, I know we have mixed feelings about going. I think we've decided we're going to schedule something. How about we get your input on these options to help us enhance that fit?
I think I want to drop something in there too. For the parents out there, and as myself, I think it's also important for us to share when we're having a rough time with our young folks, especially if they're teenagers. Let them know that we don't have all the answers. The pandemic is difficult for us as well. I think I have sons, they're adults now, 29 and 25. And we check in with each other. And we always pretty much have since they were very, very young. And I let them know if I'm having a rough time. And it's okay. I can still be that parent. I can still be that rock for them, but it's okay not to be okay. And I think that goes for all of us. And sometimes we forget and feel like we've got to be these perfect parents to raise these perfect children. And that is not the case. So I just want to share that.
I would add one more resource. We are really struggling with the racialized environment and the racial inequities that are happening in our world today. We know that is also impacting our mental health and well-being. We have, I know Community Mental Health and some others have created some more maybe informal, non-traditional therapeutic spaces. Washtenaw, My Brother's Keeper, has been working with a group of young men really around rap and song and lyric as a way to open up that space that's safe. It's led by Black males, and it really is for our young brothers. That group is looking to expand that. And I know in talking with Shay Carter, who's principal in Ann Arbor, he's literally just grabbing and circling up kids, a lot of young brothers, and creating space and voice. And so part of what our work has been is to infiltrate those really trusted adults with some of these basic strategies so that they can work with kids and families that may be reticent to be in a more traditional clinical environment. So there's resources for that too.
Great. Thank you all for your insight and sharing. I think this is a really, really rich discussion. I would encourage anyone who is viewing this, if you have other ideas about next steps, please share them with the foundation. It really is in alignment with the mission. So thank you again to all of our panelists. We appreciate your time and insight. And I just want to close by sharing, some key resources, but the others that we've discussed today will also be shared on the Miles Jeffrey Roberts Foundation website. So thank you.